Hey, in this video I will introduce you to California Proposition 65 from the perspective of a importer or an Amazon seller. So we're just going to dive into it. And CA Prop 65 is a substance regulation. Essentially sets limits or bans on certain chemicals and heavy metals in consumer products. What makes this regulation somewhat unique is that it applies broadly to products for all age groups, which is unlike CPSAA and other certain regulations that apply specifically to, say, children's products, or FDA rules that apply specifically to, say, food contact products, whereas CA Prop 65 then applies broadly to all consumer products, all age groups. And in short, as is the case for other substance regulations such as REACH in the EU, if a product or a material contain excessive amounts of restricted substances, then that product is then classified as non-compliant. But it's a bit more tricky when it comes to CA Prop 65. It also allows for a certain degree of flexibility. So which products are covered? As I said, this regulation applies to consumer products, so textiles, even FCM, packaging, toys, and so on. Let's look into a couple of substances, and if you're somewhat familiar with substance testing, then you will see that these are some of the usual suspects. It's heavy metals, phthalates, asbestos, cadmium, etc. And something that is also important to understand with this regulation, with CA Prop 65, is that it's not just about the limits. It's not about the limit in the sense that it only concerns the amount in a certain material, but it's also about migration, or to be specific, how much a consumer, a human being, could potentially absorb. The reason is that if you go back to the 70s, this was initially concerning the water supply. It definitely evolved since then. Another thing that I want to mention in this video is that different substance restrictions, meaning substances and also the specific limits, apply depending on the product, as you can see here. This is common when it comes to substance regulations, and not really unique for California Prop 65. So, as an importer Amazon seller, how do you know which restriction or limit apply to a certain product? And my recommendation is that you don't really make that assessment on your own. You should ask a qualified third-party testing company like Intertek or Kima, SGS, etc. Ask them to make that assessment for you. That's what I recommend anyway. You definitely not ask your supplier. That's the worst thing you can do. Okay. As I said, there's some degree of flexibility when it comes to California Prop 65, and that manifests in terms of warning labeling. So you need to attach a warning label if your product may contain listed substances above the set limits. Okay, and in short, if your products are not lab tested, then they could potentially contain such substances above the set limits. For example, in the table I just showed you. So, in order to not attach a warning label, you would need to have some sort of evidence, which translates into having some sort of lab test report. This is also the case if the product contains substances that are not listed as a safe substance. It's called the safe harbor level. In short, they haven't specified a safe harbor level yet for that substance, and that's also the case. That's also the case if you haven't tested the product. So that's why there's something called CA Prop 65 lab testing, which means that okay, I don't want to attach a warning label, such as this one, in which case you would need to go to a company like Kemau, Intertek, and get it tested according to the substance test list that they apply to your product, which in turn also depends on the material the product is made of. But yeah, these are two examples, and you also need to specify the name of one or more substances. Could be chemicals, could be heavy metals. And in all honesty, unless you have this data, how can you even know what it could potentially contain? So yeah, I don't really see any way around getting a product tested in order to ensure compliance with California Prop 65. If anyone is aware, then please comment on this article. If you watch this on YouTube, definitely be interested in knowing how you dealt with it in that case. Oh, that's a duplicate. Right, so what does Amazon say about California Prop 65? Number one, they say that you're responsible. They say that you need to determine if your product needs a warning. As I just explained, well, it's one thing if you're a big company and you can actually make that assessment. You can then you would be able to create your warning label. But the way I see it, at least for an importer, an Amazon seller, an SME, I believe it will be very difficult to make that assessment. Probably going to cost you a lot more than just getting your product tested. You may also need to provide, well, you will need to provide warning, the warning text or the warning instructions to Amazon. What else do they say? Yeah, and they this can either be triggered, meaning a request can either be triggered when you list a product or if they contact you. These are the two situations in which case you may have to provide this information. Okay, so that's everything about California Prop 65 in this video. If you want to learn more about compliance requirements, you can go to compliancegate.com/tool.